Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
It is Thursday, and all of our guests today, including John Shannon, standing by. Brought to you by the Vancouver Giants. Check out Calgary's first-round pick, Samuel Honzek, and the Giants at the LEC when they kick off next season on September 22nd versus Victoria. You, though, were saying, Rick, that you think Honzek's going to make the Flames roster.
Stop it. Ryan was. Oh, and by another Vancouver Giant just went to Calgary, Lipinski. So the Flames, they've been scouting the Giants all year.
Get your season tickets for next year now at vancouvergiants.com/season tickets. The NHL draft continues. Here to talk about that and more, NHL analyst, co-host of the Bob McCown podcast, John Shannon. John, thanks for doing this. How are you?
I'm great, boys. How are you?
Good. Before we get into the draft, the NHL Awards show. You're Mr. Television. I don't know what your opinion is of the award show, but what would you do to maybe change things? It's a good question.
I used to give all this line to anybody that worked for me or I worked around, and they tried to be funny on the air. I said, if you're that funny, you should be doing stand up in Vegas. Mm-hmm. Comedy is hard.
It is.
Comedy is really hard. I think it would probably behoove those people that are running that part of the events for the National Hockey League to dig a little deeper and maybe dig a little better on just delivering the facts. Just deliver the facts. That show ended up being 2 hours and 12 minutes. And I just wonder that is there any way that with the awards that are given out, we can actually go deeper into what the awards are, what they mean, the nominees, and do a pure and simple hockey show as opposed to trying to do Jimmy Kimmel live.
Yeah. Well said. We basically said the same thing.
And I like Jimmy Kimmel.
Oh, no. Oh, absolutely. No, I get what you're saying.
He's from Vegas.
Yeah.
It's. I have. When I was at the CBC, we did produce the award show, and some things were successful, some were failures. When I was at the league, we were involved in the award show. We had a rock band stand the Stanley Cup upside down. It is not an easy show to do. No. But I think that has to refocus and be simpler and more direct about hockey for hockey people.
Yeah, comedy is difficult to do. I always wonder why people who act in a comedy don't get nominated for Oscars. It's the toughest thing to do. Don't try to make comedians out of people who aren't comedians. There you go. Exactly. Blackhawks. Yeah, the Chicago Blackhawks. Just want to deal with them, John. They draft Connor Bedard, 11 picks this year, 6 first-rounders over the next 3 years. Taylor Hall, Nick Foligno. They've picked up Corey Perry, the Josh Bailey deal. Just what's your opinion of the job Kyle Davidson is doing right now?
Well, I obviously this was pretty well planned out for the last 3 or 4 months. On the basis of what the Blackhawks needed to do, with the assumption that they were going to get a game-changing player, whether it be Bedard, whether it be Carlson, whether it be Fantilli. The Blackhawks were going to be near the bottom of the league in that position. To get Bedard and then try to find a way with all the cap space they have to create a protective environment for him is really important. I think the additions of Corey Perry, and he will get an extension, and Nick Foligno, who got a $4 million deal for next year, I think are brilliant moves by the Blackhawks. I think that they have a long way to go, but what you need to do in those first couple of years is protect the player and protect Connor Bedard so that he doesn't get a wash in losing or get a wash in being picked on by every other team in the league. And I think that what the Blackhawks have done in the last couple of days has been brilliant.
When you see, John, what happened to Kerry Price last night, what goes through your mind? He did apologize on Twitter a few minutes later, but all I could think of was Bobby Clark and what Bobby went through at the stage, and others as well. But what were your thoughts on Kerry Price?
Yeah. I feel bad for Kerry. I mean, here's a guy that wants to help the organization and was asked to be part of it. There's nothing wrong with carrying a small card down.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with carrying a cheat sheet.
Yeah.
But in the end, it became a moment that both David and Kerry took in the proper light. So it just happens. That goes to another story about what needs to happen with the draft too. I think we have to find a way to improve the presentation of what's going on with the draft. So,
yeah, no question. Let's go to July 1st. Brian Burke used to say GMs act like drunken sailors on July 1st. Not a lot of caps. The difference now is most of the teams are capped out. So what do you expect? Some stupid contracts on Saturday or not?
Oh, there'll be a couple. There'll be a couple of stupid contracts. But I do think that, and I think we got a sense of this last night, Rick, with no trades on the draft floor for the first time in 16 years. The teams are going to be very, very particular with their dollars, and so from that perspective, it may be a little quieter on Saturday and people are shopping, better. But at the same time, I think there'll be a couple of stupid contracts out there that you'll wonder what happened, how it happened. But I think we also have to figure out what's going to happen tomorrow with a couple of teams trying to figure out what buyouts are.
Yeah, that's true.
And we know that Josh Bailey's now being bought out. I assume Blake Wheeler's being bought out. I suspect there's a couple more that we don't know of that have no move contracts. So from that perspective, tomorrow we'll decide a little bit more of what we see on Saturday.
Mike Babcock, can he resurrect his career in Columbus?
It's a good question. I must admit, John Davidson's one of my best friends, and we had as friends, we had talks about whether Mike would be the right guy, and I wasn't sure. In fact, I was sure. I didn't think he was the right guy, and I think that the Blue Jackets heard that from a few people. But all you have to do, guys, is look at the success of those 4 or 5 coaches last year that moved teams with veteran experience. Paul Maurice and Pete DeBoer and Rick Bowness and Bruce Cassidy, and say, wow, you know what? There is something to be said. And no one's with the team that Columbus has. You can't take the risk of a rookie coach anymore. But Mike has to learn some lessons. Mike has to be a better coach. Mike has to be more in tune with the player of 2023 than he was in his first few years in Toronto, where it was really my way or the highway. So let's hope that he's learned, and let's hope that he can become that mentor teacher that we always thought he was, as opposed to being a little dictatorial in his last few years in Toronto.
Erik Carlson, if indeed, and quickly, John, sorry, but if indeed he moves from San Jose, which Ontario team would be a better fit? Back to Ottawa or the arch-rival Leafs?
Well, listen, the Maple Leafs, if the Maple Leafs expect to be in the higher echelon of the National Hockey League, they need to improve their defense. They know that. Mm-hmm. You saw that with how Vegas won the Stanley Cup. You need a better defense. I just don't know how they can afford it. And I do think that there is a little bit of push from Erik himself. I do think he loves Ottawa. He loves what goes on there. But I'm still thinking that it's got to be an East Coast team in the United States in the end that makes the push for Carlson.
Outstanding, outstanding, John, as always. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week for a final time this go-round.
I'll be in Halifax next week, so we'll have some fun.
What's going on there?
The Danny Gallivan Cystic Fibrosis Golf Tournament.
Oh, my gosh.
Been going for 11 or 12 years now. It's just one of the great events. Apparently, my wife has told me I'm bringing home 17 lobsters. So, actually, the lobsters have to be home before me. So,
yeah. Oh, you had me at Danny Gallivan, John.
Wow. We can talk about it next week.
Yeah. Well, we'll do 20 minutes on that. Thanks, John. Appreciate that.
Cheers, boys. Happy Canada Day.
You bet.
Thank you.
Same to you.